All right, welcome to part 2 of our very, very busy weekend. As you can see, it's really deceiving, but he built this up. Jace built up the backside about 2 feet. So it's still obviously low center here, still higher here. Sorry, the guys are yelling in the background here. But we got a lot done yesterday. I think I showed you guys most of the stuff. But we also used up a majority of our spare compost. So I'm going to have to order in some more compost. You saw the potatoes get planted, the peas were all planted, the spinach and 3 types of lettuce planted, carrots planted on that third bed in, half of it. Second bed's already planted. This bed will get planted, I think, today with radishes. And then we're going to start off with some site work. We just worked in the basement also. And this bed we still have to fix from the truck hitting it. This bed we'll end up adding more compost to before next weekend for planting. And then these 3 beds got installed here. So we're going to wait on the 4th one because that would do more site work over there required. That's looking pretty good. And then inside the tunnel, through our maze, tomatoes are uncovered. They will get a little bit of sunburn, not a problem. They'll be fine. I'm not too worried about that. Also, I need to transplant the strawberries, but they're starting to bud, which is kind of fun. And then onions are getting planted today, so I'm excited about that. And I was able to get these tubes all planted. So I've got 3 sun gold in the back, 2 of the Torahina cherry, which are also a orange cherry, and then 6 of the early girl tomatoes, these are like 60 days, 65 days from now, we should be actually eating tomatoes, which is pretty cool. Ranunculus in here is doing really well. I should come in and actually prune some of this stuff, the older leaves, but I probably will not get to that, truthfully. It's much sunnier this morning than we thought, so I won't be fertilizing because I don't want to burn the leaves from that. And I actually may even drop the cloth on those tomatoes back there. The guys are going to run some string now. So while they're setting up the posts, I'll take you guys over here to show you what we had done. These are all still for sale. The ranunculus and violas and some pansies. You guys saw yesterday that my dad helped move the ranunculus out here. These are all the crates, and what we're going to do is we will add Lizzie's in this grouping once we fill those crates. Perennial garden still going strong, and then over here we were actually able to drive the tractor down, staying on this side of the garden since it's still pretty wet over there, and prep these 3 beds for the onions. So added some nice fresh compost to the top, raked them off first, got some of the bigger stuff gone, but you're gonna hear me squishing. And I didn't fertilize yesterday on the garlic since there was standing water in there yesterday, in the aisles, so, walking aisles, so I didn't do that, but it's looking like it dried up really quite a bit yesterday, so hopefully today with the sun coming down in the morning will be good, but it is supposed to rain later this afternoon. We may cover the back with a tarp since it's way too wet right now for us to get in there. You can see it's a board there, but I actually got my boot stuck the other day. Had to get pulled out by Jay and use the board as a stepping stone. That was pretty funny. But we're also talking about maybe even doing a cover crop there right now just to get it ready, because we will actually be doing squash there, so we will be laying some of the landscape fabric down and hilling where the squash plants are going, to cut down on the weeds. So still deciding there. But today my big project is the onions here, getting all 3 of these beds planted. But I do have help coming, so the guys will help if I really need it. I'll be doing lots of little breaks as I'm still recovering. And then if it's still really nice out, we may try to start tackling pulling up the black fabric, taking down the fishing line that was trying to be deterrent for the deer last year, and taking up the black fabric, pulling up all the couple dandelions that are in here, doing a lot of the cleanup. There's a bunch of larkspur that self-seeded, so I'll want to move that potentially. And then we need to add a bunch more compost and get these beds ready for next weekend ideally. So that is on my wish list today. But because the ground's so wet, we can't get the tractor to the beds. So it would be bring the stuff close and then wheelbarrow it. So we'll see if between the onions and that, how far we get. Some of the ranunculus are doing really, really well. So I'm excited to see that. Some of them are definitely, these purples were much smaller corms, and you can see the plants are just much smaller. So that is something to think about when you're ordering, is what size corms you get. These overall were much larger corms than I used last year, and the plants were much healthier and grew a lot faster. So definitely a learning curve there. And I have hoops in shade cloth. You can see a metal hoop from last year. But I've got multiple different hoops and shade cloth I can put on here, and ag cloth I can put on here, depending. If you just heard that, that is Flicker, Northern Flicker Woodpecker. And that's what we're named our property after, Flicker Hill Homestead. They are a fun woodpecker and sound a lot like the pileated woodpecker. But look them up, they're gorgeous. They migrate back to our property every year. All right, I just drove my dad's little buggy. It's huge. Sorry, Can-Am. It is not a little buggy. I just drove his buggy down here. It's lighter weight than our tractor, so with the grass being so wet, it's a little better. I'm going to be planting out onions, and so we have Patterson and I think these are, Red Wing here. We have 1,500 onions. Give you guys an idea. So I need to get these planted. I'm going to start on one row and just keep going and try to take breaks as well. I should have help coming soon. We'll see how many I can get planted. Spacing on these, if you don't do irrigation, should be much wider, and if you don't fertilize, even wider. But I think I end up doing about like thumb to pinky, so somewhere around 5-6 inches to the next one, which allows the bulbs to grow up pretty big. We will have full irrigation of multiple rows within a row, and I'll be fertilizing these. So all of that helps me have closer planting and make more effective use of my bed space. But if you get behind fertilizing, if you end up with a drought and you're not doing irrigation, you will have small onions. So most of these are being grown for growing places in local food works. It's interesting from the homestead, modern homestead style. I before was saying how many onions I needed by pounds for my homestead, because that's how I sell them. I sell them by the pound. But what is the reality is that when you're cooking at home, you just grab an onion, and if it's a half a pound, you use half a pound. If it's a quarter, between a quarter pound and a half pound, you're going to use whatever size onion you grab, and you're just going to throw it all into your dish, right? And so there's besides doing our canning and sauces where I'm actually measuring by pound, everything else I'm doing is just grab an onion and cook with it. So the quantity of onions that we need to grow for ourselves is a little different. So there's 1,500 here. My mom gets one of these packs. And then it should be about 50 or 60, I think, per pack. And then we need somewhere around, if I'm doing 200 pounds of canning of tomatoes between sauce and salsa, and each one of those is between 1 pound and 2 pounds of onion, right? For per 10 pounds. So that's, let's say 30 pounds of onions just to be safe side. And then we need an extra, chipmunk's yelling at me right behind me. Then we need an extra, let's say 3 onions. Let's go 2 onions a week because we cook with onions often. And at that point, when we're cooking, you figure how many weeks we need onions for per year, right? And it's like, okay, we have 52 weeks of the year. There's, maybe we only eat onions 46 of those 52 weeks. And so there's a bunch of assumptions you can make when you're backing into that number. But if I say, okay, I have 46 weeks times 2 onions a week, right? Now you're up to 90s. Jesus, my math is horrible today. You're up in the mid 90s. So from then, let's say 100 onions, because I want to buffer that. So I need 100 onions, plants, not 100 pounds, 100 onions for me, for eating, for just dinner cooking. And then we need the pounds of onions for the sauce, which was, as we said, 30 pounds. Well, most of our onions average just around half a pound for the last few years. So if I'm saying it's a half a pound onion, we did have a couple that I think were over a pound. But if I say half a pound onion, then, okay, so then 30 becomes 60. So I need 160 onions for us. Plus, I want to assume some buffer and loss, right? Or some storage that doesn't keep, or whatever happens, like they don't cure well or something, right? So then I'm planning for 200 onions plants for Jay and I. And then we, I have, let's say, a pack of 60 going to my mom. So that's 260. So I'm going to say 300. So that leaves me with, from 1,500 total. I know this is a big math problem. From 1,500 total minus that 300 for my parents and Jason and I, that leaves us with 1,200 onions that we could possibly sell to growing places and local food works, right, that we're targeting to sell. And from there, I'm assuming half pound per onion because I'm selling to them by the pound. In my planning material to them, I said 500 pounds, even though I could have 600 or even 700 pounds possibly for them, depending on how the season goes. So those are the numbers and the business side of it, of how I'm coming up with what I'm doing. And then, then you figure out what your wholesale price is and what your cost is and what your retail price is for onions. And so these end up being roughly around, between the two variety, if I combine the Red Wing and the Pattersons, they end up being about 8 cents per onion, plus shipping. And then plus the compost, which we had for free this year, but it's not free, right? Because we had to use it here instead of somewhere else. So there's some cost associated with that. Plus the fertilizer for the whole season. So depending on what type of fertilizer we're doing, things like that, price changes. But let's call that $15 for these 3 beds for the entire season of fertilizer, buy in bulk. And 8 cents per, right, is times 1,200 onions, right? All of these math problems. And so we have Excel spreadsheets that we use to calculate a lot of this. But it is an interesting thing. And then you also have to make sure that you're covering your labor. Like, how much is your time worth, and how much time are you spending on these onions? We have irrigation materials that will be used for this, right? They're reusable, but they can only be used for so many seasons. So how much does that last us, right? How much cost is there really associated with growing onions and time? So lots of big math problems, and the combination of also the farming side of it, you don't want to undercut your pricing, because that does a couple things, right? It's locally grown, like, you know, everything that went into that onion to get there, and you're selling these onions. There's a value associated with that. You should not be less than the grocery store, and I strongly believe that, because if you are, your costs are so much higher. Even with the transportation, your costs are so much higher being a small farmer. So make sure you are really looking at your pricing. Look at other farmers, talk to other farmers, call other farmers if you are in that pricing world. It's a different type of thing. So we are in between. We're technically officially a farm here, but it's an in-between process where we're not doing large-scale farming. One of our friends does 2,000 bell pepper plants, right? And I'm excited to do 100 bell pepper plants this year. So you think about the scale things, my cost is much higher than her cost. So we're not trying to be a full production farm. We are trying to have, provide, another small scale that will pay for some of our other farming that we do for ourselves, and because we love it and enjoy it. This is not a money maker type of industry, but it is good for my soul. So there's a definite reward on the other end of that. So lots of factors play into this, but I did want to talk through that a little bit today, because it is something that comes up. So just be aware on if you do end up trying to sell your extra. That's not a bad thing too. And there's a lot of organizations that will also take your donation. So if you're a large farmer or even a large backyard gardener, which is what I kind of considered myself before with our raised bed garden, but we were harvesting 900 pounds a season out of our raised bed gardens, and this corn bed, which is no longer corn. And so with all of that, there's a lot of places you can look for that are now like local distributors, like Growing Places and Local Food Works here in North Central Mass. There's up north, I think Willinghands, like up where I grew up in Vermont, New Hampshire area. There's all these other organizations that are doing very similar things. So look at that. Look at your senior centers. Look at your food pantries, all those different things. A lot of them do accept locally grown vegetables. So if you have an abundance crop of something, and you don't want to compost it, and you want to help provide something to your community, you can do that. There's so many outlets right now, which is fantastic. So I'm going to get to work. Wish me luck. Hopefully my back doesn't kill me, but I will show you guys how I'm doing this. Okay, we got the flicker going in the background, which is always fun, the northern flicker. So this is one plant, right? They're going to come in all different sizes. Don't be surprised. You're going to have some small ones, some larger ones. And this is an onion that was found in our compost pile somehow, missed yesterday. This is still solid. Actually, it could probably be eaten. But I'm going to plant it, and we'll have some nice allium flowers here. So this is going over here. Planting onions is pretty simple. I just use my thumb. You notice I did wear gloves on because I always get dirt up my nails and rocks, and it hurts. And when you're doing this many, it is worthwhile wearing gloves. I don't mind getting my hands in. So I just push down here, pinch together. So I'll show you guys a few of those. And this should go really fast. I'm doing one-handed, of course, but I tend to do these one-handed anyways. So push down, pinch. Push down, pinch. Try to keep these in rows so that we can get the irrigation in. Will be important. You don't want to put them down too far. It's not like a leek where you do them further down. Anything that's like big rocks, sticks, mulch, try to move that out of the way. You don't want them competing with that. One of the reasons we put these onions down here is less likely to get eaten by the wildlife. So the garlic and the onions are a safe crop to have down in this space. Some of these are massive. They're much bigger than last year's. So because these rows are so wide, I'll do the ends like this just to get started, and then I'll go down and do one side and then come back the other side. So that is really all there is to it. It's supposed to rain this afternoon. The ground's kind of moist anyways, and these are completely cold tolerant, so you can actually plant these 4 to 6 weeks before your final average last frost date, and they'll do absolutely fine. You don't need to cover. Even if it snows on them, they'll be fine. So all right, I will update you guys when I get a little further.